It's 2025, Donald Trump has reclaimed the presidency, and the world is buzzing with speculation. Headlines scream about rising tensions in the Middle East, shifts in global alliances, and a more divided America. The big question on everyone's mind is simple but explosive. Will the U.S. continue to back Israel as strongly as before? Or is this the beginning of a new chapter, one where even a historic alliance like this could be reevaluated? Let's try to find out the answer of this question. For decades, the relationship between the U.S. and Israel has been rock solid. Billions of dollars in military aid, unwavering political support, and a deep-rooted strategic partnership have defined this bond. But 2025 isn't 2018, and the world has changed. Trump's return to the White House raises as many questions as it does expectations. Is this the continuation of a golden era for Israel under Trump's policy? Or have the shifting sands of global politics and public opinion created cracks even he can't ignore? Let's rewind a bit. When Trump first took office in 2017, he wasted no time shaking up U.S. policy toward Israel. His administration moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and brokered the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations. These moves were hailed as historic in Israel and by Trump's supporters, but were deeply polarizing elsewhere. Now, with Trump back in power, expectations are high. Will he double down on his pro-Israel policies, or could the pressures of a divided America and a changing global landscape force him to take a different approach? Let's not forget, 2025 isn't just about Trump's preferences. It's about the wider political, social, and geopolitical forces at play. So, why is this question even being raised? After all, the U.S. has been Israel's closest ally since its creation in 1948. But here's the thing. 2025 isn't just another year. The Middle East is more volatile than ever, with Iran pushing its nuclear ambitions and proxy wars flaring up across the region. Israel's policies in the West Bank and Gaza are drawing louder international criticism, with terms like apartheid being used more frequently by human rights groups. At home in the U.S., public opinion is shifting too. Younger Americans, especially progressives, are questioning the billions of dollars sent to Israel each year. And all this is happening against the backdrop of Trump's polarizing presidency, which has split the country like never before. Here's the million-dollar question. Can even Trump maintain the U.S.-Israel alliance in its current form, or will 2025 mark a turning point? For decades, the U.S.-Israel relationship has been more than just politics. It's been about strategy. Israel has been America's anchor in the Middle East, a reliable partner in a region filled with unpredictability. Military aid has been a cornerstone of this relationship. The U.S. sends Israel about $3.8 billion in aid annually, much of it earmarked for cutting-edge defense systems like Iron Dome. In return, Israel shares intelligence, collaborates on defense technologies, and acts as a counterbalance to U.S. adversaries like Iran and Syria. But here's the catch. The geopolitical chessboard is shifting. With the U.S. increasingly focused on countering China and Russia, the Middle East isn't the priority it once was. Even Trump, despite his strong pro-Israel stance, might find himself facing pressure to recalibrate U.S. commitments abroad. Could Israel's strategic importance be downgraded in favor of other global concerns? It's a question no one in Washington or Tel Aviv wants to answer. Now let's bring it closer to home. Within the United States, the unwavering support for Israel that once united Republicans and Democrats is starting to fray. Among Republicans, Trump's base continues to see Israel as a key ally, often rooted in both strategic interests and religious beliefs. But among Democrats, especially younger and more progressive voters, there's a growing push for accountability. The debate isn't just about money, it's about principles. Critics argue that U.S. aid enables policies that perpetuate conflict, from settlement expansion in the West Bank to the blockade of Gaza. Progressive lawmakers like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders have openly called for conditions to be placed on U.S. aid, sparking heated debates in Congress. Here's the twist. Trump's return could reignite these divides. His unflinching support for Israel might deepen the rift between Republicans and Democrats, making the alliance more of a partisan issue than ever before. And in a country as divided as the U.S. is in 2025, even long-standing foreign policy traditions are no longer guaranteed. Let's zoom out for a moment. The U.S.-Israel alliance doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a much larger geopolitical puzzle. Internationally, Israel's policies have come under increasing scrutiny. Human rights groups have accused Israel of violating international law, while the United Nations has passed countless resolutions critical of its actions in Palestinian territories. Historically, the U.S. has shielded Israel from these criticisms, often using its veto power at the UN Security Council to block resolutions. But how long can that continue? Trump's America First policy might actually complicate this. While his administration was staunchly pro-Israel, it was also deeply skeptical of multilateral institutions like the UN. If Trump doubles down on this approach, the U.S. might find itself even more isolated on the global stage, especially if it continues to back Israel unconditionally. Could this isolation push the U.S. to rethink its stance, or will it further cement its role as Israel's lone defender? But let's not jump to conclusions. What would it actually look like if the U.S. scaled back its support for Israel? Imagine the implications. Without U.S. military aid, Israel would face immense pressure to maintain its security in a volatile region. Diplomatically, losing America's backing could leave Israel vulnerable to international sanctions or boycotts, especially from Europe. And economically, the ripple effects could be enormous, not just for Israel, but for the U.S. defense industry, which benefits from joint ventures and arms sales. At the same time, what if Trump's return means doubling down on unconditional support? How would the world react? Could it push other nations in the Middle East closer to adversaries like Russia or China, creating new alliances that challenge U.S. influence? Or could it embolden Israel to pursue even more aggressive policies in the West Bank and Gaza, sparking a new wave of conflict? So, where does this leave us? Here are 3 scenarios to consider. Business as usual, conditional support, a strategic reassessment. Trump's return solidifies the U.S.-Israel alliance, with no major changes to military aid or diplomatic support. This would be the path of least resistance, especially given Trump's history of strong ties with Israel. Growing domestic and international pressures forced Trump to place conditions on U.S. aid, such as requiring Israel to freeze settlement expansion or engage in peace talks. This scenario would mark a significant shift, but could also face backlash from Trump's base. In a more dramatic turn, the U.S. begins to scale back its involvement in the Middle East altogether, prioritizing other global challenges. While unlikely, this would represent a true turning point in U.S.-Israel relations. At the end of the day, the question of whether the U.S. will back Israel in 2025 isn't just about politics. It's about the future of one of the world's most complex and controversial alliances. Trump's return to the White House adds a new layer of unpredictability, but the forces shaping this relationship go far beyond one man. From shifting public opinion in the U.S. to rising tensions in the Middle East, the stakes couldn't be higher. So, will 2025 be the year everything changes? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure: everyone is watching.